My name is Beatrice Robinson, but everyone used to call me Grandma B. I'm 72 years old, and I'm about to tell you about the Christmas that changed everything. The moment I need you to understand happened in my own living room. The room where I'd rocked 3 babies to sleep. The room where I'd hosted 37 Christmases. The room where my late husband Walter and I had slow danced to Luther Vandross on our 40th anniversary. My son Terrence stood by the fireplace with his wife Keisha and their 3 children. My daughter Rochelle sat on the couch with her husband Brian and their 2 kids. The Christmas tree lights twinkled. The smell of my honey-baked ham and sweet potato pie filled the air. Gospel music played softly from the speakers. Everything looked perfect. But I should have known better. "Mama," Keisha said, her voice sweet as poison. "Before we do presents, I have something special for you. A card we all worked on together." She handed me a red envelope. My hands were shaking a little. I'd been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 6 months earlier. Some days were worse than others. That day, my hands trembled as I opened the envelope. "Read it out loud, Grandma," my granddaughter Imani said. She was 9 years old. She was smiling, but something in her eyes looked sad. I pulled out the card. It had roses on the front. I cleared my throat and began to read. "Roses are red, violets are blue." My voice caught. I kept reading. "We don't want a sick grandma. Christmas is not for you." The room went silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then Keisha started laughing. A high, cruel laugh that made my stomach turn. Terrence joined in, slapping his knee. Rochelle giggled nervously, looking at her phone. Brian chuckled like this was the funniest joke he'd ever heard. My grandchildren looked confused. The younger ones didn't understand. But Imani's eyes filled with tears. "Did you see her face?" Keisha wheezed. "Oh my God, I told you this would be hilarious!" I stood there holding that card. My whole body was shaking now, and it had nothing to do with Parkinson's. "Get out," I whispered. "What?" Terrence said, still laughing. "I said get out of my house." My voice was stronger now. "All of you, get out!" Keisha rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Beatrice. Don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke." She called me Beatrice, not Mama Robinson, not even Mrs. Robinson, just Beatrice, like I was nobody to her. "This is my house," I said. "My name is on the deed, and I'm telling you to leave now." Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. Let me take you back 6 months, to the day everything started falling apart. I was at Dr. Morrison's office on a Tuesday afternoon in June. The sun was shining. Birds were singing. I'd driven myself there in the Lexus Walter had bought me before he passed 3 years ago. "Mrs. Robinson," Dr. Morrison said, looking at my chart, "I'm afraid I have some difficult news. The tremors you've been experiencing, the stiffness in your movements. You have Parkinson's disease. It's early stage, but we need to start treatment right away." I sat there in that cold examination room, and I cried. Not because I was afraid of being sick. I was afraid of being alone. Walter was gone. My mama and daddy were gone. My sister Loretta lived in Atlanta. I had my children, but we weren't as close as we used to be. Still, they were my babies. I called Terrence first. "Mama, I can't talk right now," he said. "I'm in a meeting. Can I call you back?" He never called back. I called Rochelle. "Oh, Mom," she sighed. "That's tough. Look, I have to pick up the kids from dance class. We'll talk later, okay?" We didn't talk later. A week went by, then 2 weeks. I finally invited them both over for Sunday dinner. That used to be our tradition. Every Sunday after church, my kitchen would be full of family. Laughter, love, the sound of forks scraping plates and children running through the halls. They came that Sunday, but everything felt different. Keisha walked through my door like she was inspecting a house she was thinking about buying. She ran her finger along my mantle, checking for dust. She opened my refrigerator without asking and wrinkled her nose. "Mama B," she said, "you know this milk expired 2 days ago?" I'd called her daughter when Terrence first brought her home 15 years ago. Now she called me Mama B when other people were around, and Beatrice when they weren't. During dinner, I told them about my diagnosis. I explained that Dr. Morrison said I could manage it with medication, that I could still live independently for years, that I just needed some support. "Well," Terrence said, cutting into his chicken, "we need to talk about your finances, Mama." "My finances?" I repeated. "You're going to need care eventually," Keisha added. "And care is expensive. We've been doing some research. A good nursing home costs like $6,000 a month." "I'm not going to a nursing home." "Not now," Terrence said. "But eventually. And we need to plan for that. How much do you have in savings?" I stared at my son, my firstborn, the baby I'd nursed for 13 months, the boy I'd worked double shifts at the hospital to put through college. "That's private," I said quietly. "Private?" Keisha laughed. "Mama B, we're family. There's no such thing as private. Besides, Terrence is your power of attorney." "No, he's not," I said. "Walter and I never set that up." The look that passed between Keisha and Terrence should have warned me, but I was still thinking of them as my children. I couldn't see what they'd become. Rochelle stayed quiet through all of this. She just pushed food around her plate and avoided my eyes. The visits became more frequent after that. Keisha started showing up at odd times. She'd walk through my house, opening drawers, looking in cabinets. She asked to see my bank statements. She wanted copies of my house deed. She suggested I sign some papers just to make things easier later. I said no. Every single time, I said no. "You're being difficult, Mama," Terrence said one day in August. "We're just trying to help you." "I don't need that kind of help," I told him. His face hardened. "You know what? Maybe we need some space. This is too stressful for our family." The visits stopped. The phone calls stopped. My grandchildren's birthdays came and went, and when I tried to drop off presents, no one answered the door. I spent Thanksgiving alone. I made a small turkey breast and watched the Macy's parade by myself. I called both my children. Neither answered. By December, I was heartbroken. I missed my grandbabies. I missed my son and daughter, even though they'd become strangers to me. When Keisha called on December 20th and invited me to Christmas dinner, I almost cried with relief. "We've been thinking," Keisha said sweetly. "Family is family. We shouldn't let disagreements keep us apart. Come celebrate with us, Mama B. The kids miss you." I should have known. I should have seen it coming. But I was a lonely old woman who missed her family, and I was desperate enough to believe in second chances. I spent 3 days cooking for that Christmas. My honey-baked ham with pineapple and brown sugar, macaroni and cheese with 4 kinds of cheese, collard greens cooked slow with turkey necks, cornbread dressing, sweet potato pie, peach cobbler, banana pudding, all the dishes I'd made every Christmas since my babies were small. I loaded everything into my car Christmas morning. My hands were shaking, but I managed. I even wrapped presents for everyone. I'd used my Social Security check to buy toys for the grandchildren and gift cards for the adults. When I walked through that door carrying my dishes, Keisha smiled at me. But it wasn't a real smile. It was the smile a cat gives a mouse. "Mama B," she said, "you didn't have to bring all this food. We already ordered catering." Catering? I'd spent 3 days cooking, and they'd ordered catering. "That's fine," I said. "We can have leftovers." "Actually," Keisha said, "we don't really have room in our fridge. Maybe you should take it back home." My food sat on the kitchen counter, untouched, while everyone ate salmon and asparagus from some fancy restaurant downtown. The food looked nothing like Christmas. It looked like something you'd serve at a business dinner. The children kept looking at my dishes. Little Marcus, Rochelle's 4-year-old, started crying because he wanted my macaroni and cheese. Rochelle told him to hush. That's when Keisha suggested opening presents. That's when she handed me the card. And now we're back to where we started. Me standing in my living room, holding that cruel card, telling my family to get out. "You can't kick us out," Terrence said. "This is Christmas." "I can and I am," I said. "Take your children and leave. Don't come back." Keisha's smile finally dropped. "You know what, Beatrice? Fine. But don't come crying to us when you're sick and alone and need help. We're done." "Good," I said. They gathered their things. Rochelle looked like she wanted to say something, but Brian pulled her toward the door. The children were confused and crying. Imani looked back at me, and I saw the apology in her eyes. Then they were gone. The house was silent, except for that gospel music still playing softly. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out the suitcase Walter had bought for our trip to Paris. The trip we'd planned for our 45th anniversary. The trip we never took because he got sick. I started packing. My hands were shaking worse than ever, but my mind was clear. Crystal clear. Because what my children didn't know, what nobody knew except my lawyer, James Washington, and my financial advisor, Patricia Chen, was that Walter and I had been more than comfortable. We hadn't just been comfortable. We'd been wealthy. Walter had patents, software patents from his years working as an engineer at IBM. Those patents earned royalties, good royalties, and Walter had been smart with his investments, real estate, stocks, bonds. When Walter died, he left everything to me. The house, which was paid off and worth $500,000. The investment accounts, worth $1.2 million. The royalty payments, which brought in about $8,000 a month. Plus my pension from 30 years as a surgical nurse and Social Security. I'd kept living simple because that's how Walter and I had always lived. We'd grown up poor. We'd learned to be careful with money. We'd driven practical cars and shopped at reasonable stores and saved for rainy days. But I wasn't broke. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't desperate. And I'd had enough. I packed warm clothes, swimsuits, sundresses, my passport, my medications, my jewelry. Then I sat down at my dining room table and wrote 2 letters. One was addressed to Terrence Robinson and Rochelle Davis. The other was addressed to James Washington, attorney at law. I sealed both envelopes. I placed one on my kitchen counter where someone would find it eventually. The other, I put in my purse. At 6:47 p.m. on Christmas Day, I locked my front door. I loaded my suitcase into my Lexus. I drove to the airport. At 10:30 p.m., I boarded a flight to Miami. From Miami, I would fly to Barbados. From Barbados, I would figure out the rest of my life. As the plane took off, I turned off my phone. I didn't turn it back on for 24 hours. When I finally powered it on in my hotel room overlooking the Caribbean Sea, I had 53 missed calls, 17 voicemails, 42 text messages. Because someone had found my letter. And my letter had changed everything. I sat on the balcony of my hotel room in Barbados, watching the sunrise paint the ocean gold and pink. The phone in my hand kept buzzing. Terrence, Keisha, Rochelle, Brian. Numbers I didn't recognize, over and over and over. I took a sip of my coffee, real Caribbean coffee, strong and sweet, and finally opened the voicemail from Terrence. "Mama, please call me back. Please. We need to talk about this. You can't just... Mama, please. This is crazy. You're not thinking straight. It's the Parkinson's. It's affecting your judgment. Call me back. Please." The second voicemail was from Keisha. Her voice wasn't sweet anymore. "Beatrice, you need to come home right now. What you did is illegal. You hear me? Illegal. You can't just take everything and run away like some kind of thief. We have rights. Terrence is your son. I'm calling a lawyer." I deleted that one and moved to the third. Rochelle. She was crying. "Mom, please come home. I know things got out of hand at Christmas. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. But this letter... Mom, you can't mean these things. Please call me. The kids are asking about you, please." I set the phone down and pulled out the copy of the letter I'd kept for myself. I'd written it Christmas night, right before I left for the airport. My hands had been shaking so badly that the handwriting was messy, but every word was clear. The letter said, "To my children, Terrence and Rochelle, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Not dead, though I know that would probably be more convenient for you. Just gone. I'm writing to tell you that I've made some changes. Changes you need to know about. First, I've removed both of your names from my will. You will inherit nothing when I die. Not the house, not the money, not the jewelry your grandmother left me. Nothing. Second, I've placed everything I own into an irrevocable trust. James Washington is the trustee. The beneficiaries of this trust are my 5 grandchildren, Imani, Jaden, Malik, Marcus, and little Zoe. They will receive their inheritance when they turn 25 years old. Until then, the trust will pay for their education, medical care, and basic needs, but only if they maintain contact with me and show me basic respect and kindness. Third, I've set aside money for my own care. I've hired a care coordinator. I've made arrangements with a private nursing service. When and if I need help, I will have it. I don't need you. Fourth, I'm leaving the country for an extended period. I don't know when I'll be back. Maybe never. I'm going to live my life. The life I put on hold for 30 years while I raised you. The life I put on hold for another 20 years while I helped raise your children. The life I was going to live with your father before cancer took him from me. I gave you everything. My time, my money, my love, my energy. And you gave me a card that said Christmas was not for me because I'm sick. So now, I'm taking back my life. You want to know what's in my bank accounts? Ask James Washington. You want access to my house? Too bad. I've changed the locks. And my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, has instructions to call the police if you try to enter without permission. You taught me something important on Christmas Day. You taught me that blood doesn't mean loyalty, that giving everything doesn't guarantee anything, that I was a fool to think you loved me the way I loved you. So thank you for that lesson. It hurt worse than the Parkinsons ever could. But at least now I know the truth. Don't look for me. Don't call me. When and if I decide to reach out, I will. Until then, you're on your own. That's what you wanted, isn't it? For me to be gone? Congratulations. You got your wish. Beatrice Robinson. I folded the letter and put it back in my purse. Then I turned off my phone again. I had breakfast on that balcony. Fresh fruit, fried fish, Johnny cakes with butter. I watched the waves and listened to the seagulls and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. After breakfast, I walked down to the beach. The sand was white and soft. The water was so clear I could see fish swimming near the shore. I found a lounge chair under a palm tree and settled in with a book I'd bought at the airport. I'd been reading for maybe 20 minutes when a voice said, "That's a good one." I looked up. A woman about my age stood there, smiling. She was dark-skinned with silver locks pulled back in a ponytail. She wore a bright yellow sundress and carried a sketch pad. "I'm sorry," I said. "The book," she said, pointing. "Toni Morrison. That's a good one. You got excellent taste." I smiled. "Thank you." "I'm Diana," she said. "Diana Lawson. I'm here from Houston. First vacation by myself in 43 years of marriage. My husband passed last year, and my kids said I needed to get away." Something about her openness made me feel safe. "I'm Beatrice Robinson, from Chicago, also here by myself. Also needed to get away." Diana gestured to the empty chair next to mine. "Mind if I sit?" "Please," I said. That's how I met Diana Lawson. We talked for 3 hours that first day. She was a retired art teacher. She had 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and a story not so different from mine. "My youngest daughter," Diana said, "she got mad when I wouldn't co-sign a loan for her boyfriend, told me I was selfish, said I was a terrible mother, hasn't spoken to me in 8 months. "I'm sorry," I said. Don't be, Diana said. I'm not. Used to be, I would have chased after her. Apologized for having boundaries. But I'm 70 years old, and I'm tired. If she wants to be grown enough to disrespect me, she's grown enough to live without my help. We became friends right there on that beach. Diana invited me to dinner that night. We went to a little restaurant where the locals ate. The fish was so fresh it had been swimming that morning. The plantains were sweet and crispy. The music was loud, and everyone was dancing. When's the last time you danced? Diana asked me. I thought about it. My husband's funeral. We had a second line, New Orleans style. He would have loved it. That doesn't count, Diana said. I mean dancing for fun. For yourself. I couldn't remember. Come on, Diana said, pulling me to my feet. Life's too short to sit still. My hands were shaking. My legs were stiff. But I danced anyway. I danced in that restaurant in Barbados while my phone sat silent in my hotel room and my children panicked back in Chicago. I danced until I was sweating and laughing and feeling more alive than I had in years. That night, back in my room, I finally turned on my phone again. 72 missed calls now. I listened to one more voicemail. This one was from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Robinson, this is attorney Jennifer Martinez. I'm calling on behalf of your son, Terrence Robinson, and your daughter, Rochelle Davis. They've retained my services regarding your recent actions. We need to discuss the validity of the trust you've created and your current mental state. We believe you may have been unduly influenced or may be experiencing cognitive decline due to your medical condition. Please contact my office immediately at... I deleted it. Then I called James Washington. It was 11 p.m. in Chicago, but James answered on the second ring. Beatrice, he said, I've been waiting for your call. How's Barbados? Beautiful, I said. I'm guessing they found the letter? Oh, they found it. Terrence showed up at my office at 8 o'clock this morning with some lawyer trying to intimidate me. Said you were incompetent. Said the trust was invalid. Said a lot of things, actually. None of it true. Can they do anything? I asked. Can they challenge the trust? They can try, James said. But Beatrice, we did everything right. You had a full psychiatric evaluation 2 weeks before you created the trust. Dr. Harrison certified that you were completely competent and of sound mind. We have witnesses. We have documentation. That trust is ironclad. I'd met with Dr. Harrison in early December, right after Keisha had called with that fake sweet Christmas invitation. Something in my gut had told me to protect myself. So I'd asked James to arrange for a complete evaluation. Dr. Harrison had spent 3 hours with me, testing my memory, my judgment, my decision-making abilities. Mrs. Robinson, he'd said at the end, you have early-stage Parkinson's disease, but your cognitive function is completely normal. You're sharper than most people half your age. I'd taken those results straight to James, and we'd created the trust the next day. What about the house? I asked James now. Can they get into the house? Not a chance, James said. Your neighbor, Mrs. Chen, has been keeping an eye on things. Terrence tried to use his old key yesterday. Didn't work. The locksmith I sent changed everything, just like you asked. Terrence started yelling. Mrs. Chen called the police. They escorted him off the property and warned him about trespassing. I smiled, imagining that scene. Mrs. Chen was 78 years old and about 4'10", but she'd survived the Cultural Revolution in China and took exactly zero nonsense from anyone. There's something else you should know, James said. His voice got serious. They're talking about filing for guardianship, claiming you're not capable of managing your own affairs. My stomach dropped. Can they do that? They can file. But Beatrice, they won't win. You have Dr. Harrison's evaluation. You have Dr. Morrison's records showing that your Parkinson's is mild and well managed. You have bank statements showing you've been handling your finances perfectly. You have character witnesses. And you have me. Any judge who looks at this case will see exactly what it is, adult children trying to get control of their mother's money. So what do I do? You stay in Barbados, James said. You enjoy your vacation. You let me handle this. And when you're ready to come home, you come home. To your house, which is yours. Because everything we did was legal and right. Thank you, James, I said. My voice cracked a little. Beatrice, James said gently. Walter was my friend for 30 years. He asked me to look after you if anything happened to him. I promised him I would. So that's what I'm doing. You're not alone in this. After I hung up with James, I should have felt relieved. But I felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that my own children were trying to have me declared incompetent. Sad that the babies I'd nursed and raised and sacrificed everything for saw me as nothing but a bank account. I cried that night. Big, ugly tears that shook my whole body. I cried for the family I'd lost. I cried for Walter, who should have been here to see this beautiful ocean with me. I cried for all the years I'd spent trying to be enough, never realizing that some people will never be satisfied. But the next morning, I woke up to sunshine and the sound of waves. Diana knocked on my door at 9 o'clock. Get dressed, she said. We're going on an adventure. Diana had rented a car. We drove around the island, stopping at fruit stands and craft markets. We went to a sea turtle sanctuary and watched baby turtles make their way to the ocean. We had lunch at a cafe on a cliff overlooking the water. You seem lighter today, Diana said. Yesterday, you looked like you were carrying the weight of the world. I'm letting it go, I said, piece by piece. Good, Diana said, because life's too short to carry other people's mess. That afternoon, we went back to the beach. I was reading my book when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but the number wasn't one I recognized. It was a Chicago area code, but not Terrence or Rochelle. Hello? I said. Grandma B? The voice was small and scared. It's Imani. My heart stopped. Baby? How did you get this number? I snuck into Daddy's office and looked through his papers. Grandma, I had to call you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about the card. I didn't know what it said until you read it out loud. Mama made me sign it, but she didn't tell me what the words meant. I would never say something so mean to you. Tears streamed down my face. I know, baby. I know. It's not your fault. Are you coming home? Imani asked. Everybody's fighting. Mama and Daddy fight every day. Daddy punched a hole in the wall. Mama keeps crying and saying you stole from us. But Grandma, I heard them talking. Before Christmas. They were planning to put you in a home and sell your house. They said you wouldn't even know because of the Parkinson's. My blood ran cold. Imani, baby, how did you hear this? I was supposed to be asleep, but I got up to get water. They were in the kitchen talking. Daddy said, the house alone is worth $500,000. Split 2 ways, that's $250,000 each. And Mama said, plus whatever's in her accounts, she's not going to need it where she's going. I closed my eyes. Imani, sweetheart, you listen to me. None of this is your fault. None of it. You're a good girl and I love you so much. I love you too, Grandma. Will I see you again? Yes, baby. I promise. But right now, Grandma needs to stay away for a little while. Can you be strong for me? Yes, ma'am. Good girl. Now delete this call from your daddy's phone records, okay? I don't want you to get in trouble. Okay, Grandma. Bye. Bye, baby. After Imani hung up, I sat there shaking. Diana put her arm around me. Bad news? She asked. Confirmation, I said. They were planning to steal everything. My granddaughter just told me she overheard them plotting before Christmas. Lord have mercy, Diana said. Your own children? My own children, I repeated. That night, I called James Washington again. I told him what Imani had said. James was quiet for a long moment. Beatrice, he said finally, I think we need to go on offense. They're filing for guardianship. But what they did, plotting to exploit a vulnerable adult, planning to institutionalize you against your will for financial gain, that's elder abuse. In Illinois, that's a criminal offense. You think we should press charges? I asked. I think we should talk to the state's attorney. I have a contact there. Let me make some calls. 2 days later, James called me back. I spoke with Assistant State's Attorney Michael Rodriguez. He's very interested in your case. The conversation your granddaughter overheard, combined with that card, combined with their attempts to access your finances, it's a pattern. He wants to investigate. What does that mean? I asked. It means this might go beyond civil court, Beatrice. If they pursue the guardianship petition, if they keep harassing you, they might face criminal charges, elder abuse, financial exploitation, possibly fraud if we can prove they forged any documents or lied to any institutions. I thought about my babies, my son who I'd rock to sleep every night, my daughter who used to braid my hair and tell me I was the prettiest mama in the world. Do it, I said. File whatever needs to be filed. I'm done protecting people who won't protect me. The next week passed in a blur. I explored the island with Diana. I swam in the ocean. I ate good food. I slept without nightmares for the first time in months. I took my medications and did my physical therapy exercises and felt my body getting stronger. But in Chicago, everything was falling apart for Terrence and Rochelle. James kept me updated. The state's attorney had opened an investigation. They'd interviewed Mrs. Chen, who reported multiple incidents of Terrence trying to access my house. They'd interviewed my doctor, who confirmed I was completely competent. They'd obtained my bank records, which showed no unusual transactions or signs of confusion. And then they'd interviewed some of my church members from Faith Covenant Baptist Church. People I'd been too embarrassed to face after my children stopped bringing the grandkids to service. Sister Marlene told them how Keisha had cornered her in the church parking lot, asking questions about my finances. Deacon Turner told them how Terrence had asked him if he knew a friendly lawyer who could help with elder care situations. Pastor Williams told them that Rochelle had called him in November, asking if the church had any guidance on when it was appropriate to intervene with aging parents who weren't thinking clearly. The case was building, and my children were panicking. On my 15th day in Barbados, I woke up to 17 new voicemails. I listened to the first one. It was Rochelle, and she was sobbing. Mom, please, they're saying we could go to jail. Jail, Mom. For what? For caring about you? For worrying about you? This is insane. You're doing this because you're angry about a stupid card, a joke that went too far, but you're going to let them put your own children in jail over a joke? I deleted it. Then I listened to one from Terrence. Mama, I'm begging you. Call off these lawyers. Call off this investigation. We can work this out, as a family. Please, Mama, I'm your son. I'm your baby boy. Remember? Remember when I was little and I used to crawl into bed with you during thunderstorms? Remember how you used to say I was your special boy? Please, Mama, please. I remembered. I remembered all of it. Every thunderstorm, every scraped knee I'd bandaged, every nightmare I'd chased away, every sacrifice I'd made. I also remembered that card, those words, that laughter. I deleted his message too. The last voicemail was from attorney Jennifer Martinez. Her voice was cold and professional. Mrs. Robinson, I'm calling to inform you that my clients are dropping their guardianship petition. However, I want you to know that what you're doing to this family is unconscionable. You're tearing apart your own children's lives over a misunderstanding. I hope you can live with yourself. I could live with myself just fine. That afternoon, I was packing for a trip Diana and I had planned to St. Lucia when my phone rang. It was James. Beatrice, he said, you're not going to believe this. Keisha just filed for divorce. What? I sat down hard on the bed. She filed this morning. According to the documents, she's claiming Terrence misrepresented his financial situation during their marriage. She says she was promised a certain lifestyle, and now she's discovering that the family assets she expected to inherit don't exist. She's asking for full custody and child support. I couldn't speak. There's more, James said. Rochelle's husband, Brian, he cleaned out their joint bank account yesterday and moved to Arizona. Left her a note saying he didn't sign up to be married to someone whose family was under criminal investigation. My children's lives were imploding. The families they'd built were falling apart. And part of me felt guilty. Part of me wanted to call them and say I was sorry and fix everything like I'd always fixed everything. But then I remembered Imani's voice on the phone. They were planning to put you in a home and sell your house. They hadn't loved me. They'd loved what they thought they could take from me. James, I said, what happens next? The state's attorney is still deciding whether to file charges. It depends partly on whether you want to pursue this. And if I don't? Then it ends here. They drop the guardianship petition. You keep your assets in the trust. You live your life, and they live with the consequences of their choices. But they could do this to someone else, I said slowly. Some other elderly person who doesn't have a good lawyer. Who doesn't have money to fight back. That's true, James said. I looked out at the ocean. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. Tell the state's attorney I'll testify if needed, I said. Tell him I'll do whatever it takes to make sure this doesn't happen to someone else. Are you sure? James asked. I'm sure, I said. My children made their choice. Now I'm making mine. 2 days later, I was at the airport in Barbados, saying goodbye to Diana. We'd exchanged phone numbers and email addresses and promises to visit. You're going back? Diana asked. I thought you said you might never go back. I'm not going back to Chicago, I said. Not yet. I'm going to Ghana. Diana's eyes widened. Ghana? In Africa? My grandmother was born there, I said. She came to America when she was 16. She used to tell me stories about her village, about the coast, about the history. I always wanted to visit. Walter and I were planning to do a heritage tour before he got sick. So you're going to do it now, Diana said. By yourself. By myself, I confirmed. James is handling everything in Chicago. The investigation is ongoing. My house is secure. My grandchildren are safe. I'm 72 years old, Diana. If I don't live my life now, when will I? Diana hugged me tight. You're going to be fine, Beatrice Robinson. More than fine. You're going to be free. On the plane to Accra, I turned off my phone again. I didn't want to hear my children's voices. I didn't want their guilt or their anger or their manipulation. I wanted silence. I wanted peace. I wanted to walk the same ground my grandmother had walked and feel connected to something bigger than the family that had betrayed me. The flight was long. 13 hours. I slept part of the way, watched movies part of the way, and read part of the way. When we landed in Accra, it was morning. The air was warm and humid and smelled like ocean and earth and something I couldn't name but somehow recognized. I'd booked a small hotel in Osu, a neighborhood in Accra. The hotel owner, a man named Kwame, picked me up from the airport. "Welcome home, sister," he said, loading my suitcase into his car. Home. I'd lived in Chicago my whole life, but as we drove through the streets of Accra, past the markets and the schools and the churches, something in my chest loosened. Maybe home wasn't just the place you were born. Maybe home was the place where you finally felt free. That first week in Ghana, I did nothing but rest. I sat on the hotel balcony and watched the street below. I ate at local restaurants. I practiced my limited twi with shopkeepers who laughed at my accent but appreciated my effort. I turned my phone on once, 3 days after I arrived. 94 missed calls. I turned it off again without listening to any voicemails. On my 8th day in Accra, Kwame asked if I wanted to visit Cape Coast Castle. "It's heavy," he warned me. The dungeons where they kept enslaved people before the ships. It's important, but it's heavy. I want to see it, I said. We drove 2 hours to Cape Coast. The castle was white and imposing, sitting right on the ocean. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. Kwame gave me space as I walked through the dungeons. The rooms where men had been chained, the separate rooms where women had been kept, the door of no return, where they'd been loaded onto ships. I stood in one of those dungeons, and I cried. I cried for my ancestors who'd survived this. I cried for all the families that had been ripped apart. I cried for all the mothers who'd lost their children and never saw them again. And I cried for myself. For the family I'd lost. For the dream I'd had of growing old surrounded by children and grandchildren who loved me. But when I walked back out into the sunshine, I felt lighter. Because I'd survived too. I'd survived my children's betrayal. I'd survived my grief. I'd survived, and I was still here, and I was free. That night, back at the hotel, I finally turned on my phone and checked my messages. There was one from James Washington, marked urgent. Beatrice, call me as soon as you get this. The state's attorney has made a decision. I called him back, my heart pounding. James? It's me. What happened? They're filing charges, James said, against both Terrence and Keisha. Financial exploitation of an elderly person, attempted fraud, conspiracy. Rochelle is cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for immunity. She's agreed to testify about their planning. Rochelle is testifying against Terrence? I couldn't believe it. She's trying to save herself, James said. And honestly, Beatrice, the evidence against her was weaker. She participated, but it was mostly Terrence and Keisha driving everything. The prosecutors think with her testimony, they have a solid case. When's the trial? Preliminary hearing is in 6 weeks. Trial probably won't start for 6 months. You'll need to testify, but not yet. They'll let you know when. 6 months. 6 more months before I had to face my son in a courtroom and tell a judge how he'd tried to steal my life. Beatrice, James said, are you okay? I'm in Ghana, I said. Ghana? In Africa? Yes, I'm going to stay here for a while. Maybe a long while, maybe forever. I don't know yet. But James, whatever happens with the trial, I'm not coming back to live in Chicago. That part of my life is over. Then what do you want to do with the house? I thought about that house. The house where I'd raised my children. The house where Walter had died. The house that my children had tried to steal. Sell it, I said. Sell everything. Put the money in the trust for my grandchildren. And James, add a provision. If any of my grandchildren want to visit me, wherever I am, the trust will pay for their travel, once a year, every year, until they're 25, but only if they come alone, not with their parents, just them. That's a beautiful idea, James said. I'll make it happen. After I hung up, I sat on my balcony and watched the stars. Different stars than the ones I'd seen in Chicago. Southern Hemisphere stars that my grandmother had seen when she was a girl. I thought about Imani, about Marcus and Jaden and Malik and little Zoe, about how they were innocent in all of this, about how maybe, just maybe, I could still have a relationship with them. Not as the grandmother who cooked and babysat and got used, but as someone they chose to know, someone they visited because they wanted to, not because their parents forced them. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Grandma B, it's Imani. I got your number from Mr. Washington. He said it was okay to text you. I miss you. I hope you're happy wherever you are. I love you. I texted back. I love you too, baby. I'm in Ghana. It's beautiful. Someday you can visit me here. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Really? I can visit? Really, when you're older, just you and me. We'll have an adventure. I can't wait, Grandma. I can't wait. I set the phone down and smiled. Because maybe I hadn't lost everything. Maybe some things could be saved. But as I sat there in the warm Ghana night, my phone started ringing again. Terrence, then Keisha, then a number I didn't recognize. I answered the unknown number. Mrs. Robinson? A woman's voice. This is Channel 7 News in Chicago. We're doing a story about elder financial abuse, and we've learned about your case. We'd like to interview you. Get your side of the story. Let people know what your children tried to do to you. My story. On the news. Everyone would know. Everyone would see what my children had done. When? I asked. We'd like to fly you back to Chicago next week. We'll pay for everything. This is an important story, Mrs. Robinson. Your case could help change laws, could help protect other elderly people. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. No, I said, I'm not coming back, but you can interview me here, in Ghana. If you want the story, you come to me. There was a pause. We'd have to send a crew internationally. That's expensive. Then I guess you have to decide how important the story is, I said. 3 days later, a production crew from Chicago arrived in Accra. The news crew set up their cameras on the beach in Osu. The reporter, a black woman named Angela Davis, no relation to the famous one, she told me with a smile, sat across from me under a palm tree. The ocean waves provided the background sound. Mrs. Robinson, Angela said, once the cameras were rolling, tell us what happened on Christmas Day. I told her everything. About the card, about the laughter, about discovering my children's plans to institutionalize me and steal my assets, about the letter I'd written and the trust I'd created, about fleeing to Barbados and then to Ghana. Angela's eyes filled with tears as I spoke. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. What do you want people to know? She asked. I want people to know that being old doesn't make you stupid, I said. Having Parkinson's doesn't make you incompetent. And if your adult children are treating you like a burden instead of a blessing, you don't have to accept that. You have rights. You have value. You deserve respect. What about your son and daughter-in-law? They're facing criminal charges. Do you feel guilty about that? I looked directly at the camera. I feel sad. I feel heartbroken. But I don't feel guilty. They made their choices. They have to live with the consequences. Just like I'm living with the consequence of raising children who loved my money more than they loved me. And your daughter Rochelle? She's cooperating with prosecutors. Rochelle is trying to save herself, I said. That's between her and God. I hope she learns something from this. I hope she becomes a better person. But I'm not holding my breath. One final question, Angela said. Do you have any message for other elderly people who might be experiencing something similar? I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to keep my family together, all the times I'd bitten my tongue and swallowed my hurt and pretended everything was fine. Fight back, I said. Don't be ashamed. Don't think you deserve to be treated badly because you're getting older or because you're sick. Get a good lawyer. Protect your assets. And if your children or family members are exploiting you, report them. You don't owe loyalty to people who abuse you, not even if they came out of your body. The interview aired 2 weeks later. It went viral. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed 3 million times on YouTube. News outlets across the country picked it up. I started getting messages from elderly people all over America, thanking me for speaking up, sharing their own stories, telling me I'd given them courage. I also got messages from Terrence and Keisha, or rather their lawyers, cease and desist letters, defamation threats, angry emails saying I'd ruined their reputations and destroyed their lives. I forwarded everything to James Washington and kept living my life. I rented a small house in Accra, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room with windows that faced the street. I bought furniture from local craftsmen. I hired a housekeeper named Amma who came 3 times a week and taught me how to cook Ghanaian dishes: jollof rice, ground nut soup, kelewel, red. I found a church, Holy Trinity Anglican, where the choir sang in English and Twi and the pastor preached about grace and second chances. I made friends with the women in the congregation. They adopted me like I'd been there all my life. I started volunteering at a local school, teaching English to children who wanted to practice with a native speaker. The kids called me Nana Bea. Nana meant grandmother in Twi. It felt right. My Parkinson's was manageable. I'd found a good neurologist in Accra who adjusted my medications. I did physical therapy twice a week. Some days my hands shook. Some days my legs were stiff. But I was managing. I was living. And I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy for the first time in years. 6 months after I arrived in Ghana, James Washington called with news about the trial. "It starts in 2 weeks," he said. "They need you to testify. Are you willing to come back?" I'd known this was coming, but it still made my stomach twist. "Yes," I said. "I'll come back, but just for the trial. Then I'm coming right back here." "Understood," James said. "I'll book your flight. First class. You're going to testify, face your son, get justice, and then get back to your life." "How's Rochelle?" I asked. I couldn't help it. "She's a mess," James said honestly. "Brian took half of everything in the divorce. She's living in a small apartment with the kids, working 2 jobs. She's called my office 6 times asking how to contact you, saying she's sorry, saying she wants to make it right. But she's still testifying against Terrence? She is. The prosecutors need her testimony to establish the conspiracy. Without her, they just have Terrence and Keisha's attempts to access your accounts and the card. With her, they have proof of premeditation and planning." "So she's saving herself," I said. "She's doing what she has to do," James said. "Just like you did." I flew back to Chicago on a Tuesday in late September. The leaves were changing colors. The air was crisp. Everything looked the same, but I felt different. Lighter. Stronger. James picked me up from the airport. He drove me to a hotel downtown. Not my old house, which had been sold 3 months earlier. The new owners were a young couple with a baby. Mrs. Chen had sent me pictures. They'd painted the living room a soft yellow. They'd planted flowers in the garden. They were making it their own. I was glad. That house deserved a family who loved each other. The trial started on Thursday. I sat in the courtroom, surrounded by strangers. James sat beside me. The prosecutor, Michael Rodriguez, had prepared me for what to expect. "They're going to try to make you look confused," he'd said. "Like you don't understand what's happening. Like the Parkinson's has affected your mind. Don't let them rattle you. Just tell the truth." Terrence walked into the courtroom with his lawyer. He'd lost weight. His suit hung loose on his frame. His eyes found mine across the room, and for a moment I saw my little boy. My baby, who used to climb into my lap and fall asleep during church. Then I remembered the card, the laughter, the plans to steal my life. I looked away. Keisha came in next. She looked immaculate, hair done, makeup perfect, designer dress. She was playing the role of the respectable wife. But her eyes were hard and calculating. The trial moved fast. The prosecutor called witnesses. Mrs. Chen testified about Terrence trying to break into my house. Dr. Morrison testified about my diagnosis and my competence. Dr. Harrison testified about the psychiatric evaluation that proved I was of sound mind when I created the trust. Then Rochelle took the stand. I hadn't seen my daughter in almost a year. She looked older, tired. There were gray streaks in her hair that hadn't been there before. She wouldn't look at me as she walked to the witness stand. "Ms. Davis," the prosecutor said, "can you tell us about the conversation you had with your brother and sister-in-law on December 10th, 2024? Rochelle's voice shook. "We met at Terrence's house. Keisha made dinner. After the kids went to bed, we talked about Mom, about her diagnosis. Keisha said it was the perfect opportunity. The perfect opportunity for what? To take control of her assets. Keisha had researched guardianship laws. She said if we could prove Mom was incompetent, we could become her legal guardians. Then we could make all her financial decisions. Sell her house, access her accounts, put her somewhere she'd be taken care of while we managed her money. What was the plan for your mother's care? Rochelle's voice dropped to a whisper. There was a facility in Wisconsin. Nice place. Expensive. But Keisha said once we had control of Mom's money, we could afford it. And it was far enough away that Mom wouldn't be able to just leave. My hands were shaking. Not from Parkinson's. From rage. What about the Christmas card? The prosecutor asked. That was Keisha's idea, Rochelle said. She said we needed to show Mom that she wasn't welcome anymore, that we were done accommodating her. She thought if we humiliated Mom enough, she'd be more willing to sign over power of attorney voluntarily. She thought Mom would be desperate to get back in our good graces. And what did you think of this plan? Rochelle finally looked at me. Tears streamed down her face. I thought it was cruel, but I went along with it, because I wanted the money too. I wanted my share of Mom's house. I wanted to stop worrying about bills. Her voice broke. I wanted things more than I wanted my mother. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I sat there stone-faced. Her apology meant nothing. She was only sorry because she got caught. The defense tried to tear Rochelle apart on cross-examination. They called her a liar. They said she was making things up to save herself. But Rochelle had receipts. She had text messages between her and Keisha. She had emails about the guardianship research. She had recordings of phone calls where they discussed the plan. My daughter had been smart enough to protect herself, just not smart enough to realize what she was doing was wrong until it was too late. On the third day of trial, I took the stand. The prosecutor asked me to tell my story. I did. I told them about raising my children alone after Walter died, about working double shifts to put them through college, about taking care of their kids while they built their careers, about the Christmas card and the laughter and the feeling of being thrown away like garbage. Mrs. Robinson, the prosecutor said, why did you create the irrevocable trust? To protect myself, I said, and to protect my grandchildren. I knew if I died and left everything to my children, the grandkids would never see a penny. But this way, my money will go to education and opportunities for my grandbabies. They'll have choices I never had. Do you regret your decision? Not for 1 second, I said. Then the defense attorney stood up. She was young, aggressive. She smiled at me like we were friends, but her eyes were cold. Mrs. Robinson, you have Parkinson's disease, correct? Yes. And Parkinson's can affect cognitive function, can it? It can, but it hasn't affected mine. How do you know? Because I've been tested by multiple doctors, all of whom have confirmed I'm competent. But you abandoned your family on Christmas Day. You fled the country. You've been living in Africa for almost a year. Does that sound like the behavior of someone thinking clearly? I looked her dead in the eye. It sounds like the behavior of someone who's finally free. The courtroom was silent. Mrs. Robinson, the defense attorney continued, isn't it true that you were hurt by a joke that went too far? And instead of communicating with your family, you overreacted and destroyed their lives? No, I said calmly. What's true is that my son and daughter-in-law plotted to steal my assets and imprison me in a nursing home against my will. What's true is that they laughed at me for being sick. What's true is that they saw me as a bank account instead of a human being. I didn't destroy their lives. They destroyed their own lives by being greedy and cruel. But you cut them off completely. You won't even speak to your own son. I cut off people who abused me, I said. I don't owe my abusers access to me just because we share DNA. The defense attorney tried a few more angles, but I didn't budge. I'd practiced with Michael Rodriguez. I knew what to expect. And I knew my truth. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt like I'd shed 1,000 pounds. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, I was sitting in the courtroom with James on one side and Angela Davis on the other. Angela had stayed in Chicago to cover the trial. We'd become friends. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honor," the forewoman said. "On the count of financial exploitation of an elderly person, how do you find the defendant, Terrence Robinson?" "Guilty." "On the count of conspiracy to commit fraud, how do you find the defendant, Terrence Robinson?" "Guilty." "On the count of attempted theft by deception, how do you find the defendant, Terrence Robinson?" "Guilty." They found Keisha guilty on all counts, too. Terrence sat there, staring straight ahead. Keisha started crying. Sentencing happened 2 weeks later. Terrence got 3 years in prison. Keisha got 4 years because she'd been the mastermind. They'd also have to pay restitution, not to me, but to a fund for elder abuse victims. Rochelle got probation and community service. She had to speak at elder abuse prevention seminars, telling her story as a warning to others. I didn't stay for the sentencing. James called me in Ghana and told me the outcome. I cried when I heard it. Not happy tears, just sad ones. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that my son would spend 3 years in prison. Sad that my grandchildren would grow up with their father behind bars and their mother working 3 jobs to survive. But I didn't regret what I'd done. I couldn't. Because if I'd stayed silent, they would have won. They would have stolen everything. And they would have done it to someone else eventually. 3 months after the trial, I got a call from Imani. She was 13 now. Her voice was different. Older. "Grandma B," she said. "Can I use the trust money to come visit you? Mr. Washington said I could. Once a year. By myself." My heart soared. "Yes, baby. Yes, when?" "Spring break? I have a week off from school. I'll be waiting for you." Imani came in April. I picked her up from the airport in Accra. And when I saw her walking through those doors, I burst into tears. She'd grown so much. She was almost as tall as me now. We spent a week together. I took her to Cape Coast Castle and told her about our ancestors. We went to the markets, and she learned to bargain for fabric. We ate at local restaurants, and she tried foods she'd never tasted. We sat on my porch at night and talked about everything: school, friends, her dreams. "Grandma," she said one night, "are you ever coming back to Chicago?" "I don't think so, baby," I said. "This is my home now." "I understand," she said. "What Daddy did was really bad. I heard everything at the trial. Mama took me. She thought I should know the truth." "How is your mama?" I asked carefully. "She's different now," Imani said. "She cries a lot. She says she's sorry every day. She's going to therapy. She's trying to be better." "But Grandma, I don't think she expects you to forgive her. She just wants you to know she's trying." I didn't respond to that. Forgiveness was complicated. Maybe someday. Maybe never. I didn't know yet. "What about you?" I asked Imani. "How are you?" "I'm okay," she said. "It's hard with Daddy in prison. But Grandma, I'm also kind of relieved. Things are calmer now. Mama doesn't fight all the time. Nobody's scheming or lying. It's just quieter, more honest." "Sometimes quiet and honest is better than loud and fake," I said. "Yeah," Imani said. "I think so too." The rest of her visit flew by. When I took her to the airport, we both cried. "Can I come back next year?" she asked. "Every year until you're 25, I said. "That's the rule, and after that you can come whenever you want. You'll always have a home here with me." "I love you, Grandma B." "I love you too, baby. So much." After Imani left, I settled back into my life in Ghana. I kept volunteering at the school. I kept going to church. I kept making friends and learning the language and exploring the country. I went to Kumasi and saw the markets. I went to Mole National Park and saw elephants. I went to the Volta region and hiked in the mountains. I lived. Really lived. For the first time since Walter died, maybe for the first time in my whole adult life, I was living for myself. A year after the trial, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter, written in careful handwriting on lined paper. It was from Terrence. Dear Mama, I'm writing this from prison. I've been here for 8 months now. 8 months of having nothing to do but think about what I did, what I became. You were right about everything. I loved your money more than I loved you. Keisha and I, we got so caught up in what we thought we deserved, what we thought was owed to us, that we forgot you were a person. We forgot you had feelings. We forgot everything you'd sacrificed for us. I can't blame Keisha for all of it, even though I want to. She came up with the plan, but I went along with it. I laughed at that card. I tried to break into your house. I tried to have you declared incompetent. Those were my choices. My sins. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mama. For all of it. For breaking your heart. For betraying your trust. For being the kind of son who would do what I did. I think about you every day. I wonder if you're happy. I hope you are. I hope you're living the life you always wanted, the life Dad would have wanted for you. Imani tells me you're in Ghana. She says you're teaching kids English and going to church and eating good food and smiling all the time. She says you look younger than you did before. Healthier, happier. I'm glad, Mama. I'm really glad. You deserve happiness. You always did. I get out in 2 years. When I do, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be better. Not for you. You don't owe me anything. But for myself. And for my kids. So they don't grow up to be like I was. Greedy, selfish, cruel. I love you, Mama. I always have. I just forgot how to show it. I forgot that love is about giving, not taking. You tried to teach me that my whole life. I'm sorry it took prison for me to learn the lesson. Your son, Terrence. I read that letter 3 times, then I folded it up and put it in my dresser drawer. I didn't write back, not yet, maybe not ever, but I kept the letter. Because despite everything, despite all the pain and betrayal and heartbreak, Terrence was still my son, and some part of me still loved him. Not enough to let him back into my life, not enough to forget what he'd done, but enough to hope that maybe, someday, he really would become a better person. 2 years after I moved to Ghana, I woke up one morning and realized I'd stopped counting the days. I'd stopped waiting for something to happen. I'd stopped living in the past or worrying about the future. I was just here, present, alive. My Parkinson's had progressed a little. My hands shook more. I needed a cane sometimes. But I was managing. I had a good doctor, good friends, a good life. Imani had visited 3 times now. She was 15, tall and smart and kind. She wanted to go to college and study international relations. She talked about maybe living in Ghana someday, maybe working at the embassy or teaching English like I did. Jaden, Terrence's oldest son, had asked about visiting. He was 18 now, old enough to make his own decisions. I told him yes. He was coming in the summer. Maybe, slowly, I could rebuild relationships with my grandchildren. Not the relationship we'd had before, where I was there to serve them, but a real relationship based on mutual respect and genuine love. As for Terrence and Rochelle, I didn't know. Terrence would be released from prison next year. Rochelle had been writing to me for months, long letters, full of apologies and explanations and promises to do better. I read the letters. I didn't respond, but I read them. Maybe someday I'd forgive them, maybe not. Maybe forgiveness wasn't the point. Maybe the point was just living well in spite of what they'd done. Living free. living joyfully, living without bitterness or regret. On the 3-year anniversary of that terrible Christmas, I threw a party. I invited all my friends from church. I invited Amma and her family. I invited the teachers from the school. I invited my neighbors. We had jollof rice and fried chicken and plantains and groundnut soup. We had music. We had dancing. We had laughter. And as I stood in my little house in Accra, surrounded by people who chose to love me, who saw me for who I was and not what I could give them, I realized something. I'd lost my family, but I'd gained myself, and maybe that was the better trade after all. At 75 years old, I was finally free. Free from obligation, free from manipulation, free from people who took and never gave anything back. I was free to be Beatrice Robinson, not Mama or Grandma B or somebody's caretaker or somebody's bank account. Just Beatrice. Just me. And just me was more than enough. That night after everyone left, I sat on my porch and looked at the stars. The same stars my grandmother had seen. The same stars that had guided enslaved people north to freedom. The same stars that still shone, no matter what happened on earth. I thought about my journey. From that horrible Christmas to this peaceful evening. From heartbreak to healing. From betrayal to freedom. It had been hard. It had been painful. There were days I'd cried myself to sleep. Days I'd questioned everything. Days I'd wondered if I'd made the right choice. But sitting there under those stars, with the warm Ghana breeze on my skin and the sound of life all around me, I knew. I'd made exactly the right choice. I'd chosen myself. And that choice had saved my life. My phone buzzed. A text from Imani. "Happy anniversary, Grandma. 3 years since you got free. I'm proud of you. Love you always." I texted back. "Love you too, baby. See you next month." Because Imani was coming for Christmas. My first real Christmas in 3 years. And this time, there would be no cruel cards, no laughter at my expense, no betrayal, just love. Real love. The kind that asks nothing and gives everything. The kind of love I should have had all along. The kind of love I finally had now. I went to bed that night with a smile on my face and peace in my heart. And when I woke up the next morning to the sound of roosters crowing and children laughing in the street, I said a prayer of gratitude. Thank you for the strength to leave. Thank you for the courage to fight back. Thank you for the wisdom to choose myself. Thank you for this life. This beautiful, unexpected, hard-won life. And as the sun rose over Accra, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and orange, I started another day of living free. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.